Namaste, children. Welcome back to your social science history class. Today we will move to the next chapter 5, that is the culture of the Vedic period. The main learning objectives that we are going to learn in this chapter is we will be studying about the meaning of Vedas, pre-Vedic period, social life, position of women, economic life, political life and religious life. We'll study about the post-Vedic period. What were the political changes, social changes and religious changes that took place. And we'll also know or we'll study about which were the two great epics of our country. So children, let us move to the Vedic period. With the arrival of the Aryan race children, which was originally they came from Central Asia, a new culture started emerging in India. This we call it as the Vedic culture, plains of the river Saraswati. See, river Saraswati is here, and the later the and later the river Gangas. The period in which the Vedic literature was formed, we call that as the Vedic, that we call it as a Vedic period. Now we will move on to what do we mean by the word Veda. The word Veda means knowledge, children. It has been derived from the Sanskrit root with means to know. It donates with containing knowledge, that is Vidya, the most sacred and authoritative knowledge. Veda is therefore it is called as a book of knowledge. The word Veda does not refer to one single literary work, children, but indicates a whole great literature. There are we are having four Vedas. These Vedas are Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajurveda and Atharvana Veda. When we tell Rig Veda, it is the praise of God. Sama Veda is the origin of music, that is Shabda, Brahmananda Brahma. Yajurveda means the Vedas of worship. Atharva Veda means various branches of science, Ayurveda, economics, including Vedic maths. Now let us know what do we mean by the word Rig Veda. The Rig Veda, children, it is an ancient sacred text said to be 7,000 years old and had a mysterious hymn that gave the speed of light. Yojananam Sahasra Shate Cha Yojane Ekena Nimitshadam Kramaman Namostute. The sources, the sun rays, children, the meaning of this, the sun rays travels 2,202 yojanas in just a half a nimisha. The word sahasra means thousand, is dvi means two, and shate means 100. This is the Rig Veda. Now let us know about the Yajur Veda. Yajus means mantra in prosaic form. The Yajur Veda is thus a compilation of the specific mantras to be chanted when performing different sacrificial fires and the specific regulations to be observed during it. Knowledge, action, and worship are the three categories of a successful living. Yajurveda is an encyclopedia on the Vedic ritualistic worship, that is Karma Kand. The Yajurveda has two parts, that is the Krishna and the Krishna and the Shukla. The chief teacher, that is the Acharya of the Yajurveda, was the sage Vaishampayan, and he created a disciples called Yadanaya Valakya. Now we will move on to Samaveda. The meaning of the word Sama is dear or the promise of a lover. In some contexts, it is also used as singing. It is this meaning which applies to the popular Samaveda. Many mantras from the Rig Veda have been incorporated in Samaveda children. The songs composed based on them are known as Sama. In some places, mantra from the Rig Veda itself is called Sama mantras. From the Rig Veda constitutes the foundation of Sama. A quote of Chanda Yoga Upanishad states that Ruchi Adhyudham Sama, which means the Sama are those which are based on the verses that is the Rucha. Now, one of the most important, sorry children, important interesting facts about Samaveda is the word Sama also means that brings peace to the mind. Of 100 shlokas, only 3 are available now. The mantras of Samaveda are known as Saman and have 7 swaras or musical scales basis of the 7 swaras. Sri Krishna says in Gita, the chapter 10, Vedhanam Vedosmi, meaning among the Vedas, I am the Samaveda. Lalita Sahasranama, one of the epithetics used to describe the divine mother of Samagana Priye, meaning one who is pleased with the recital of Saman. Now we will move on to the Atharvana Veda. The Atharvana Veda is a compound. Atharva Veda is a compound of Atharvan, an ancient rishi, and the Veda meaning knowledge, is a sacred text of the 4 Vedas, often called the 4th Veda. According to the tradition, the Atharva Veda was mainly composed by 2 groups of rishis known as Atharvanas and the Angirasa. Hence, the oldest name is Atharva Girasa. It is clear that the core text of Atharva Veda is not particularly recent in the Vedic Sahitya tradition and falls within the classical mantra period of Vedic Sanskrit at the 2nd BCE. Roughly contemporary with the Yajur mantras, the Rig Veda, Kilani, and the Sama Veda. Among these children, the most ancient Vedas is the Rig Veda. The Vedas are in Sanskrit and were in the oral, and for thousands of years, the river Saraswati is frequently mentioned in the Rig Veda. See here, children, this is the Saraswati river, what we are having. This is the Sindhu, the river Indus, what we are having, the river Yamuna, the river Ganga. These are all the rivers. The Ghagar Akra river, which disappeared. This is the river which disappeared, children, in the Thar desert of Rajasthan, is believed to be the ancient river of Saraswati. You can see here this river Saraswati, and it is also believed that the Helmand river of Afghanistan is the ancient Saraswati river. The 4 Vedas are the 4 Vedas and the related literature are formed during the Vedic period of the Aryans. The Vedic literature is the only source where we can understand the history of the Vedic period. The Vedic literature is the period of the Rig Veda is called as a prehistoric period, and the period of the Vedas are called as the post-Vedic period. We are having the classification of Vedic age. It has been divided into two: early Vedic period and later Vedic period. Now we will move on to let us see a gist of it, children. The early Vedic period, the difference between the early Vedic period and the post Vedic period. The early Vedic economy was mainly pastoral and the cow was the important form of wealth. But whereas in the during the post Vedic period, agriculture had a primary importance in the life of the later Vedic people. The early Vedic society was tribal and basically egalitarian, clean and kinship relations formed on the basis of the society, and the family was the basic social unit during the early Vedic period. But during the later Vedic period, the society came to be divided into four varnas: Brahmana, Rajanayas, Akshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. In the early Vedic, polity and the tribal chief or the Rajan and the priest or the Purohit had the important positions. Here in the later Vedic period, the growing cult of sacrifices enormously added to the power of the Brahmins. In the early Vedic period, the people personified the natural forces like wind, rain, water, and worshipped them as God. They worshipped God not through any abstract philosophical concept but for material gains. And here in the post Vedic period, the new gods like Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma appeared in the religious firmament of the later Vedic period, children. Now, let us move on to the social life of the people during the pre Vedic period. Family was the basic unit of pre Vedic period. Father was the head of the family and joint family system was in practice. The prisoners of war were called as the dasas and dasayus and were treated like slaves. Aryans knew the liquors like soma and sura. Now we will move on to the position of the woman. What was the position of the woman during the pre-Vedic period? The woman held a respectable position in the society. They were even practiced in political institutions. Widow remarriage was in practice. Woman was also studied Vedas. Ghosha, Apala, Lopamudra, Indrani, Vishwavara were the scholars of the Vedic period. Child marriages and sati systems were not practiced during this period. Now we will move on to the economic life. Rearing of animals and agriculture was the basic occupation of the people. You can see here. They used barley, rice, um, fish and meat as their food. They knew the use of iron and other metals. Weavers of cotton and wool, carpenters and blacksmiths, potters were also there during this period. Agriculture, medicine, and priesthood were the major occupations. People, here children, during this period, they were allowed to choose the professions of their choice. Cows were considered as a wealth and were often battles which took place against them. Now we will move on to the political life. The chief of the Aryan people was called as a Rajan. He was not a He was not a dictator and his kingship was not hereditary. The political institutions like Sabha and Samiti and the Vidhatas played a very important role in the administration. The king was known as the judge and he gave the verdicts after discussing with the elders of his court. Fighting in the battles, protecting the lives of the people, safeguarding the wealth and the welfare of the people, and the safety of the cows, all these were the duties of the king. Let us see the meaning of the Rajan. Means he should be ablest and strongest. He was elected by the people. He kept the enemies away. It was his duty. He was a spiritual ruler. He ruled according to the wishes of the tribe There were many officials who assisted him, like Purohita, who performed the religious ceremonies, and he was an advisor, and Senai was a commander in chief, led the force during the war. Rajan was no absolute leader. People had to say Sabas, it was a small assembly. Important members of the tribe advised and they guided the king. Samiti, large assembly, opinion on important matters were given by any members, and women took part here in the administration. Now we will move on to the religious Vedas. So the Aryans worshipped gods like Indra, Surya, Soma, Varuna, Mitra, Yama, Ashwini, Varuna. So they worshipped gods through the rituals of yagnas. There is only one truth, people perceive it differently. Let the noble thoughts come from the corners of the world. These were the messages which was given by the Vedas. Now, children, we will move on to the post Vedic period. In this, we will see about the changes, what and all it took place. As the centuries passed, the population started growing in the area of the Sapta Sindhu. There were many changes in the lifestyle of the people. The people of the Vedic period migrated to the plains of Ganga, Yamuna, and someone crossed the mountain ranges of India and migrated towards the south. Now we will move on to the political changes. The post Vedic period, the king became more powerful. The position of Vidhata, the position of the Vidhata was completely diminished. Even Sabha and Samiti, which were there, they also started losing their importance. The scope of the king was started strengthening, and the kingship became hereditary. The king performed the rituals like the yagas, like the Shomega Yaga and Rajasuya Yaga to expand his kingdom. Now we will move on to the social changes. Gotra system was started during this post-Vedic period. A four ashrama system of Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa started during this period. The position of women was lowered. Women were deprived, they were not given education and they were kept away from the political institution. The Varna system came into existence, which was inclusive of four Varnas, namely the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Child marriage and sati system started during this period. Polygamy started among the aristocratic people, including the king. Now we will move on to the religious life, children. The religious ceremonies became very complicated and complex. Yagas and yagnas were done again and again, offering milk, ghee, and cereals to the fire during these yagnas led to the shortage of the food. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva were the gods who were worshipped, and along with them goddesses Saraswati, Lakshmi, Parvati, and also Ganesha, Skanda, and their family deities got importance. So now let us know the difference between the early Vedic period. Here caste system existed but was not rigid as compared to the later Vedic age. During later Vedic age, caste system was rigid. Women had equal status as compared to men, but here the position of the woman became worse during the later Vedic period. During the early Vedic period, women were educated and were treated equally to men in every aspect of society. In later Vedic period, women were not provided with education as they were considered to misbehave if they received education or became literate. During the early Vedic period, the child marriage did not exist, and during the later Vedic period, child marriage existed. During the early Vedic period, widow remarriages was allowed, and later Vedic they were not allowed. During the early Vedic period, the woman was allowed to participate in the every field, but here in the later Vedic period they were not allowed to participate. So this was the difference. We can here also see. about the family. The family was the basic unit, and here joint family was there. And the same thing what I told, it is here. There were 33 Vedic gods like Indra, Agni, Varuna, and Surya. New gods like Brahma, Rama, Krishna, incarnation of Vishnu and Shiva came to be worshipped. There was absence of temples and idols. Hymns were chanted in open. Worship of forefathers and belief in life after death prevailed. But whereas here in the post-Vedic, new Brahmins introduced many rituals, made their position secure, faith in superstitions and spells, the new principles like the penance, doctrine of karma, dharma, and moksha developed. So here agriculture was the main occupation. In the beginning, the main occupation was domestication of animals, and then the agriculture. Here agriculture became the chief occupation of the people. So cattle was the important source of wealth. Here land was the important source of wealth during the later Vedic period. They were engaged in trade and commerce, dyeing, embroidery, carpentry, weaving, pottery in gold and iron were important occupations. Here traders, guilds had come up, and trade had become very important. Besides occupations of the earlier Vedic period, many new occupations like physicians, musicians, and many other professions came during this period, children. Now we will move on to the great ancient epics of India. We are having two epics, one is Ramayana and another is Mahabharata. Ramayana is written by Valmiki and Mahabharata is written by Vyasa. These two epics have guided the life and the art of Indian life. Ramayana, the first Indian epic, consists of 24,000 verses, which is divided into 7 books, composed about 6,500 years ago. We are having Mahabharata, which is the longest epic in the world literature, with 100,000 two-line stanzas, first composed about 5,000 years ago. So with this, we finish up with the chapter, The Culture of the Vedic Period. Thank you, children.